Hey everyone, today I'm bringing you my review of the brand new Estée Lauder Double Wear Concealer. Well, I say brand new, it's actually a reformulation of their original Double Wear Concealer. People are literally losing their minds over this concealer. And so if there's one person that is super fussy over concealers, it's me. So I absolutely had to test this out and bring you my review. So if you are interested in all of my thoughts, then please do keep on watching. There is only one makeup category where I feel like I still haven't found my number one holy grail product, and that is the concealer category. And that's because I have such problematic under eyes. So I have really dark, thinning under eyes. Not a surprise because I'm 42. So I have very problematic veins here because my under eyes are so thin and they're very dry. So despite having tried a billion concealers, I think I have about 4 or 5 that I think are really, really good and that give me really nice under eyes. There's not one that I would say is a massive top pick above all of the rest. So when I saw people reviewing this Estée Lauder concealer, I was very intrigued because there are people who have reviewed this that I really, really trust, such as my friend Clara, and she's very picky when it comes to makeup products, and she said that this was amazing. Now, my review is a little bit later going up because I wanted to really test this out, so this is absolutely not a first impression. I've been testing this out and I've got different bits of footage to show you that I've taken within the last few days. So this is the Estée Lauder Double Wear Stay in Place Concealer. This concealer retails for $38 or £29.50, but for that you get 12 ml of product. That is quite a lot of product for a concealer. So just picking out 2 random ones from my drawer, the Hourglass Vanish Concealer, you get 6 ml of product. Another favourite of mine is the Fenty Wear Even Hydrating Concealer, and you get 9 ml of product there. I feel like you get quite a lot for your money. This claims to be a multi-use skin perfecting 24-hour concealer. It conceals, sculpts and enhances. So as you see there, it's got this little raised tip and it's called a macro curved side, which forms to facial contours for all over coverage. This pointed tip also helps for those hard to reach areas. This concealer provides powerful oil control immediately and for up to 24 hours. Blurs imperfections with a soft focus matte finish. It hydrates on contact. It has an Invisiflex technology, which means that it has flexible polymers which move with your facial expressions throughout the day for weightless and comfortable wear. Obviously, if you have oilier under eyes or if you have oily skin, that's amazing. For me, I'm on the opposite end of that spectrum. So I have really, really dry under eyes. So this for me was going to be a really, really amazing test. Now this comes in 30 shades. One thing I did learn from watching my friend Clara's review is that the shades run really, really light. So I picked up the shade 2N and I think it's a good shade for me. I do feel like it could be a tad on the light side, especially moving into the spring, summer when I'm obviously going to go a little bit darker. But for now, it's a perfect shade match. I know you've seen a swatch of it there already, but I'll just show you 2N. So as I said, for now, it's perfect for my skin tone. I know you're probably thinking that it looks a little bit dark on my hand, but it's really not when it's on my under eyes. I think take some time to look at shade reviews, because if you're over this side of the world, you're not going to be able to change your mind once you've picked a shade. It's different if you're in the US and you're able to change your mind when it comes to shades, but we don't have that luxury over here. No, we do not. So the key takes for me from this is that it has 24 hours of oil control. It gives moisture, which is music to my dry under eyes. And it has that special technology, which is designed to move as your face moves, which who doesn't want that? One thing that I've noticed, this wand doesn't pick up a ton of product. I feel like that's to encourage you to build rather than apply a ton of product all at one time. First of all, I just want to say that in order to get the best out of your concealer, you really need to be prepping your under eyes. And the way that I prep my under eyes is with an eye serum. This is my favorite one. This is really nice because it absorbs really quickly. It helps to plump out those under eyes and keep them hydrated. But can we just say something about under eyes? If you have lines under your eyes, okay, prominent lines under your eyes, like I do, then, you know, concealer is probably going to sit into those lines, especially if you do not prep your under eyes. Please hydrate them. Even if you think you have oily skin, prep your under eyes, get them hydrated. Otherwise, this concealer or any other concealer on the planet is just going to emphasize the lines, the dryness. We need to prep. You need to prep before you pop the concealer on. I think we'll start over here. I have a little bit of dry skin. I have a really dry patch here. So I'm going to try and do my best to avoid that. So I'm going to pop a little bit here. You see how it looks quite light? On my hand, it doesn't look that light, but when it's on my face, maybe because my face is darker. I don't know how my hands don't get any sun, but there you go. So I'm going to pop just a little bit here and a little bit over here. And just to show you what it's like to pat it out with your finger, because I know a lot of you really do prefer to do that. So I'm just going to tap. Don't drag, just tap. I found that this concealer definitely gives me time to work, but it is self-setting, in my opinion. It definitely sets itself. So you don't want to be spending too much time, even though it will give you time to work it in. Don't spend too much time faffing around with it. Just blend it out and allow it to set. That's my under eye right after application, and it's really incredibly lightweight. This does not feel heavy. It doesn't feel dry. So in terms of coverage, now this eye isn't as bad as this eye, but in terms of coverage, I would say that this is a solid medium coverage that you can build up to almost full. I don't get a complete full coverage from this. Let me just go into the inner corner. And that's where this curved tip is amazing, because it allows you to get right into that corner, and that's great for somebody like me who has such incredibly deep set eyes. So I'm just taking my Nikki Rose N16 brush and I'm just going to pat that out in the corner of my eye, and you see how much that's brightened that up. It's great. It's so good. Okay, so there's the difference between my eyes. Don't have any other makeup on at all. Looks so good. For this eye, I am going to go in with a brush. So we're going to start with this bit here. And I always put some directly here. And just a small flick there. I'm going in with my Nikki Rose N16 again, because this gives me a softer application than my usual A506. You can go in with either, but just to be on the safer side. So we're going to just blend this out really softly. Just by tapping, not by dragging. And you don't need to be bringing this concealer up to your lash line. I know some of you are going to dispute and say that under your lash line is really, really dark. But really, you could just bring eyeshadow in that area rather than using a concealer. If you can avoid bringing product up here, do, because that's where a lot of our fine lines are. Now, I am going to build this up a bit more, because no matter what, I have to build up this eye if I'm not using a colour corrector. So I'm just going to put a little bit here and just in my inner corner. See how good that gets into the inner corner. Oh, it's so good. So good. So for this, I'm just going to tap again. And just blend the inner corner. I don't need a colour corrector with this concealer. I'm going to let this just rest, just sit for a minute. Let me just throw on some foundation, and then we'll go over the face and we will add some concealer to the rest of the face so that you can see how it can be used to spot conceal as well. Before I go in with bronzer and blush, I thought I would just show you a little bit of spot concealing, because let's be honest, concealers, they are not just for the under eyes. I mean, my foundation has done a pretty good job at covering up a lot of these blemishes, but I've got a few issues on the cheeks that we will cover. And honestly, this is a beautiful concealer for all over the face. So I'll just use it in a few areas across the face just to show you how it looks. So I'll use it just to lift the corners of the mouth here. And I don't think this concealer dries down to a stage where, you know, you can't move it around, but it definitely is self-setting. So you don't, unless you want super full coverage, you don't want to leave it sat there for too long. So obviously this is textured here, so you're not going to cover texture, but you will mattify that area and take away the redness. So these are all the areas where I like to try and conceal my issues. Now, I always have these notorious broken capillaries on my nose, and nothing really gets rid of that apart from using a pinpoint concealer that I have. But I think it does a really, really good job at minimizing it. And then I've got my hyperpigmentation. I've actually got a few spots around here. I don't know what's wrong with me recently. I think it's because I've been trying so many different complexion products. I've had a good few breakouts, which is normal when you are constantly trying stuff out. I think it's done a brilliant job of concealing redness. My under eyes, I've not touched, I've not powdered, and they have set and they've stayed in place and they look smooth, concealed, hydrated. They look really, really great. Let me just throw some blush on and then I'll talk you through the pros and cons, but I'm also going to show you some daylight footage with and without powder, and I think you'll be impressed. In terms of powdering this concealer, I don't feel like I really need to, because it is self-setting, and I've got some footage to show you with it powdered and not powdered. Just for review purposes, I will show you my darkest under eye powdered. So this is my most problematic under eye. So I'm actually taking the same concealer brush, the N16 that I've wiped off, because this is a great concealer brush, but it's also a great powder brush. And I'm dipping into my Huda Beauty Easy Bake. Now I would advise you to probably set this pretty much a few minutes after applying it, because it is self-setting. So that's why I'm kind of reluctant to set it, because it has already set itself, but I'll show you what it looks like anyway. So I'm just taking a really minimal amount and just pressing it under the eye. Again, we're not dragging, we're just tapping it in, and it still gives a flawless application. I just think you will get the most out of it if you set it pretty much after applying it. Let me just show you some wear test footage. So this footage is from when I used this concealer with no colour corrector, and I did set it on this day with powder. Obviously, if you really zoom in, you can see a tiny bit of settling into my fine lines, but there's no concealer on earth that will not sit into those tiny little lines that I have under my eyes. It's normal to have those. Unless you are going to have some sort of surgery under your eyes, you're not going to get rid of those lines. And I don't mind them. They are just normal. But that is probably the most flawless I've seen my under eyes in a long time. And this was about 7 hours after that original video. And as you can see, it still looks exactly the same. The only thing I will say is I do still notice a tiny bit of darkness peeking through. It is minimal. And that's why I said I don't think it's a full coverage concealer. I can still see, if I'm really trying to look for it, I still see a tiny bit of darkness. So this next video is when I really built up this concealer. So I used a fair bit, And I also used a colour corrector with it, but I did not set it. And it just looks so good. It looks as though I have set my under eyes when I haven't. This was about 5 hours in and still looks really smooth. So this is supposed to be a 24-hour concealer, and listen to these claims. So 24-hour wear, 24-hour oil control, colour true, non-caking, non-creasing, non-poring, non-streaking, settle and crease resistant, water resistant, transfer resistant, sweat and humidity resistant, non-acnegenic, so it won't clog your pores. So does it live up to those claims? And the bottom line answer is yes. I would say this is my new #1 concealer, and this isn't a first impression. I've been wearing this. I've worn it with powder, without powder. I've tried it with colour corrector, without colour corrector. It's the best concealer I've ever used. So I really try to bring you balanced reviews. So if I look at the negatives, so I'd say the one major negative for me is that I can still see a tiny weeny bit of darkness. So you just need to have those realistic expectations. If you are expecting this concealer to completely erase your darkness, to completely erase your under eye lines or wrinkles, then that's not going to happen, unfortunately. The only other negative I can see, and that's comparing it to the original Double Wear Stay in Place. The original Double Wear Stay in Place concealer had an SPF of 10. This one doesn't have any SPF in it as far as I can see. The shades, they do run a little bit light. So if you can get into store and get your shade, do that, because it's not a cheap concealer. So the positives about this concealer. #1, it's the most crease-free concealer I've ever used. Once you smooth it out under your eyes, it doesn't move. Obviously, I think that's to do with the technology that's in there. So even though you smile and you crease up your eyes, it doesn't cause creasing under your eyes. The concealer moves with those creases. It's completely self-setting. So you do not need to use powder. Obviously, if you have really hollow under eyes, or if you just like to have that security in a powder, I would say pick yourself a lovely translucent powder. I really love the Huda Beauty. I don't think you can go wrong with that. However, you don't need it. I genuinely didn't notice a difference when I wear tested this with a powder and without. And so obviously I've got powder here, I have no powder here, and I don't think there's a difference between the two. I genuinely don't. It's a real soft focus matte. The finish is just beautiful. So it never looks heavy, it never looks cakey. And I didn't notice any wear on this concealer, and I've worn this up to 10 hours and I didn't notice any significant fading or wearing. And don't forget, in the claims, this claims to be waterproof. It claims to be oil absorbing, and genuinely, you can tell. Another positive is you get a lot of product for what you're paying. 12ml is a lot of product for a concealer. This is actually a great concealer to wear with a very light complexion product. So if you like skin tints, or if you just like a tinted moisturizer, but you just want a little bit of extra coverage, but you don't want it to look like you've lathered a concealer on, this is it, because it gives you a very soft focus finish. It's very lightweight looking, but it definitely gives a great amount of coverage. So it's great under the eyes, but it's great everywhere. And so I think now, for the first time ever, I can say that I have a clear #1 concealer. In my opinion, this is the perfect concealer for dry, mature under eyes. And so obviously I am going to recommend this to you. It is, I would say, the best concealer that I've ever used, ever. And I think that's saying a lot, because I've got a lot of concealers, and for this to stand out above the rest, it says a lot. Just one last thing. If you have 1 to 5 or more concealers in your drawer, use them up. Don't go out and buy this concealer unless you absolutely need it. It's a permanent product. It's not going anywhere. It's going to be here in 6 months. It's going to be here in a year. So wait, don't rush out and buy it just because everybody's saying it's amazing. Obviously, I'm going to share it with you because I'm a concealer junkie. But if you don't need a new concealer, then you don't need to run out and purchase this, okay? Do you need it, or do you just want it? So do let me know down in the comments, have you picked up this concealer? Is it on your list? Are you intrigued? Let me know what you thought of this review. I would be really interested to hear your thoughts. Thank you so much for joining me for this video. I so appreciate you being here with me. I'm really looking forward to seeing you in the next video. But until then, take care. Bye for now.